emotional intelligence is very important in my work. So the environment in Limassol was, as I said before, it was a clash at the beginning because I was not expecting to be to involve myself in such a challenge. It was insane. I mean, I started to figure out how I could convince the Ministry of Education and Culture that promoting as well, not only Cyprus, but promoting our common ground, which is Europe, common values and culture, would be very definitely could be a strong tool in the economic and cultural tool growth in the future. When you have in your DNA, let's say, this dimension as well of sharing, it's like a good teacher, you know, is not only the knowledge that you have, is the will you have to share. We are citizens of the world, so it doesn't matter. I mean, okay.
Multilingualism is part of today's life.
Yeah, it's part of our daily life, and yes, you can't push people to respect you. You have to come to them, and when you speak 2 words in Greek, they will love it. To merci, to ευχαριστώ, τα λέει όλα. It says all. But before to go to misunderstanding, if you say to someone in Greek, thank you, ευχαριστώ, that you took time to consider that you had a moment together.
People, stories, social issues, environment, sports, arts and culture, life, urban issues, innovation. This is the El Air Uncut.
Welcome to one more podcast of our series on diversity. A podcast series done in El Air Uncut channel, but in fact that is a podcast series that will be welcomed by everyone in Limassol looking towards the future. In this podcast series, we bring on board all those citizens of Limassol that are here for some time and have already shown their impact, positive impact. So we call them Limassol ambassadors. Today, our Limassol ambassador is from France, Kathleen Nikita, who has been here for many, many years and has already a very clear impact and footprint in Limassol. Thank you for coming, Kathleen.
Thank you for inviting me, Paula.
It is really a pleasure to see you again, and we will, in a while, explain what you are up to now for Limassol and what you are again ready to offer to Limassolians interested in activities. But we are going first to introduce Kathleen as a person, as I always do. Mm-hmm. It's not about, self-promotion. It's about just being able to recognize what foreigners can do once they choose Limassol as their second home and then eventually becomes also their first home. Kathleen,
yeah.
I know that you have been in Limassol for many years. I'm going to ask you before that, when did you come to Cyprus and how? Tell us your story.
Okay. All right. So when did I come to Cyprus? I arrived in Cyprus before physically being in Cyprus, in the sense that I met my husband in Paris back then, many years ago, we might say. And I've been invited already to the journey, understanding better what was Cyprus when I was still in Paris with him. I was finishing my studies in art and communication and history of art, and I was working at the Louvre Museum. But I was passing by the Department of Cyprus without any consideration, I might say. I was more impressed by Asia back then. And so I learned about Cyprus in the most emotional way, before even coming in Cyprus. I arrived in Cyprus in 94. We arrived then in this very strange environment for me, because it was clear that I was not ready, of course, for this kind of clash, cultural clash. But it's been a pleasure, slowly to be here, and I think we took the right decision back then. So I'm here physically for the last 30 years. Yes.
Right. So that's quite a number of years.
It's a life.
Yes, it's a life for many
Yeah.
of our listeners. Maybe it's even more than their lifetime. But what I find it is always very fascinating with active citizens like yourselves is the fact that we don't really feel time, because you kept redesigning and reinventing yourself through different projects and different roles. I will straight away ask you to tell us what about that role. That was in fact the way I was introduced. Someone told me about you really and said, la Française qui est à Lanitis Foundation. Alors, the French lady that is running Lanitis Foundation. And I feel that for us living in Limassol, this is definitely your biggest and most important footprint, the years that you spent as director of Lanitis and Kathleen Evagoras Foundation. Tell us, how did that start and how that made you feel in Limassol?
It started like many things in my life, in the sense that I'm not. I try to always to put things in perspective, but I don't think that I'm driving exactly knowing where I want to go. I know where is the environment I want to work with. I can feel as well the positive vibes of the people. Emotional intelligence is very important in my work. So the environment in Limassol was, as I said before, it was a clash at the beginning, because I was not expecting to be to involve myself in such a challenge. So in 2002, I've been asked all of a sudden to handle the Lanitis Foundation. I didn't know much. I didn't know at all the family, one of the biggest family of the island, the main contributor of the growth, the economic growth of the island, that they had this property on the back of the castle in the old town, where back then very few people were passing by. I mean, it was not an attractive area. So I've been asked to handle a place that been restored. It was at the beginning, until the 60s, it was the carob mill, the Lanitis carob mill. And when the industry of carob went down, it been closed for a while. But the family decided to restore it. And this vision of restoring such an industrial, building was for me the perfect challenge, because actually it was part of my studies in France, which was cultural engineering. So how can you restore life in a building in a modern time and do it in a way that will be the center of action, reaction, and interest. So I started from nowhere. Basically, there were no particular strategy, so I had to build a strategy of this, how this building in the center of the whole town could be the main actor, the main tool in the next few years to restore life in this area of Limassol. So it's been a challenge. And yes, for 17 years, it was an everyday life challenge. really taking in consideration that we had some tools, but what I say very often about Limassol, especially the old town, is like it was the sleeping beauty. So I had to analyze first who could be my partners in crime, in terms of culture, in terms of economy, the local as well institution. I had to manage different forces to try to make this happen and to make this center a unique place. And I think we did quite a good job.
You did an amazing job.
Yes, it'd been a great journey.
Amazing job, because I remember very, very well at the very beginning
2002.
that area was completely abandoned to start with, and a few cafes, and they were definitely not the in area at the time.
No, definitely,
and
but we needed the synergy.
Area.
We had to create the synergy between the public and the private sector, which was not easy back then, and it's still not easy because they have a completely different way of thinking. The agenda is not the same, so you have to combine, policy making from the state or from the local authority and investors from the private sector to find a common ground to do something properly in the long term. But that was my mission.
100% well succeeded, I would say. I remember that we had events at the time. So I'm talking as just part of the audience, part of the city, where we would look. At the time, there was still the Cyprus Weekly as our main channel.
Correct,
so we would see, what was happening in that small column of all the events coming up. And in fact, you brought activities, you brought exhibitions, items, artistic work that we would have never seen living in Limassol, unless, of course, we would travel back and forth. So this, I would say, is a very important and a very inspiring example of how a foreigner can not just integrate herself in the new society. For you, in this case, it was Limassol, but also how a foreigner can bring from her own hometown, from her own living experience elsewhere, something completely new. So it is a very important input. What were, many stories, I am sure, but what were the most interesting stories you can remember when you first started bringing, let's say, paintings and the situation of items that were very valuable? I mean, how was it possible for you to negotiate
back then
all those logistics?
People might understand that we are talking only 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, there were no internet at that extent. We were not able so easily isolated in an island like that without all the comfort of the medias that we have now, and the flexibility of promoting anything, but not only promoting, but creating, bringing artifact in Cyprus was it was insane back then. And I think that when you take in consideration the situation, we were not known because this center, when the Lanitis Center started, there were no other institution of that kind, so no much museum apart from what we know about museum here or galleries of that scale. So it was insane. I mean, I started to figure out how I could convince the Ministry of Education and Culture that promoting as well, not only Cyprus, but promoting our common ground, which is Europe, common values and culture, would be could be a strong tool in the economic and cultural growth in the future, and what we call now very often in the cultural diplomacy. So we started cultural diplomacy from nowhere. So I had to build a branding of the center, of what we could have done, to connect with museum, with institution, to bring concept that could talk until a certain point to the public, because public was not a state of mind that you wake up in the morning with your kids and, okay, what should I do except going swimming or having a coffee with friends. So that was a new concept, to have leisure, pleasure, and culture all in one. So yes, we have extremely extraordinary stories that we brought. For example, 1 year after we started, we brought tapestries from the 17th century from Paris. And my only fear back then was like in the movies. I was at night sleeping or not sleeping and asking myself, I said, okay, can they roll them, take them in a ship and move away? We did it, no drama, everything was fantastic. And that was the only times when we had from Paris, from Big Museum of Paris, tapestry of the 17th century. But this is not the achievement on its own. The thing is that every single big event that we welcome and we created at the Lanitis Center then was aimed to shape the storytelling between Cyprus, Greece, and Europe. So those tapestry the theme of the tapestry was the Greek myth, waving the Greek myth. When we approached photography, we brought one of the guru of photography in 2009, I think, was Kudelka, still alive, who is the guru of photography. But why? Because Joseph Kudelka did a marathon, let's say, in the whole Mediterranean, on the seashore in all the countries of Mediterranean, except Cyprus. He didn't shoot archaeological site of Cyprus. So I said, okay, can you complete your storytelling with us? So we brought one of the most amazing exhibition, adding Cyprus on the map in culture. And I could have thousands of stories like that. Every time my aim was to in order to interest people as well, who were not aware about what will happen opening that door, I had to create storytelling that could have made sense in a way or another to talk to their own vocabulary, their own culture. So I try always to balance those international events with the recognition as well of the culture of Cyprus. And that was as well a beautiful journey for me to help citizens of Cyprus to understand better and to integrate what is their own culture in their vocabulary. So yes, so we touch photo, archaeology, modern art, contemporary arts as well. We work with big galleries in Greece, in Italy. I could name, we create the Festival of the Sea as well. What to say? We touch all figures of culture. I mean, music, theater, everything. We try to be inclusive for 17 years.
To summarize something that is not possible to summarize in few words, I would say that what I felt more than anything else was that you had an amazing combination between strategic skills and negotiation skills, and also inspiring communication as well, because that's what you said there. You had to create a story in order to convince sometimes someone who is in departments or a company, yes, to sponsor the event.
Definitely.
And I had the privilege to be connected with you in one of those journeys when I was from the side of the Portuguese embassy in Nicosia, trying to organize together with you the very first exhibition with artifacts that were coming for the very first time to Cyprus. And we had this amazing journey of Vasco da Gama demonstrated through all these items. And I remember that I felt that in those moments, if you don't have a connection at the personal level, I mean, the connection between the two of us, and then the connection of you with other people that here could somehow facilitate and make the logistics a little bit easier, it would have been completely impossible. Because I remember very, very clearly at the time, when I spoke with the Ministry of Culture in Portugal and told them that we would like to bring this or that item that had never left the museum in Portugal, and then I said Cyprus, it was a first. And this sort of not knowing what is Cyprus like, what is going to be the situation in terms of safety, the number of demanding conditions. You remember that? I mean, for insurance and all that, it became like a huge mountain just because they didn't know what Cyprus was like. So it's this sort of situations that you must have had in many other exhibitions where you have to not just educate people, you have to establish a connection
and
with
trust.
the person and then inspire trust. It's quite a difficult task.
It's difficult, but you know, when you are focused and when you know that, okay, you have a certain knowledge of what is cultural engineering as well. I mean, I was not starting from a background only as a theoretical, with a theoretical background or an academic, let's say. So all those practical issues were my responsibility, but it was a joint venture with my partners. So, as you mentioned, working very often or knocking at the door of the embassies in Cyprus was quite, a big risk. So I had to be very in control. Event organizer, you are always, the risk zero doesn't exist. But when you build a trust with your partners, local and international partners, it's easier. But it was crazy, yes. But once again, back then, there were no easy way from the museum abroad to exactly know who are they. I mean, there were no Google map, research like we have now. So I had to build trust. But human relation, yes, I agree with you that when you work in the culture field, and you have to do basically with human, so it's the basic tool is the trust. It's something that you can be pushy, but if people do not trust you, you can't do anything. But in those events, it was huge because we are talking about objects from Lisbon that were extremely expensive. And we talk about millions, an object that never been in Cyprus and will never come back in Cyprus, definitely. And the vibration, the story, the heritage, the historical and artistic heritage of those objects that we brought from Portugal, as we brought in other projects, were extremely, for me, how can I say? I mean, there is a lot of emotion as well in any project. But considering when we did that and how we achieved those big international events, yes, it's quite an achievement, I might say. But it's a joint venture.
Yes.
It's a joint venture.
Top achievement, but as we can very clearly see from the way you describe all of them, for you, it was just also pleasure. And this
always.
Is what I feel in every sector when we see someone, a professional of whatever industry. If you do something that you enjoy, of course, I mean, there's going to be successful results there.
Yes, and I might say when you have in your DNA, let's say, this dimension as well of sharing. It's like a good teacher, is not only the knowledge that you have, is the will you have to share. And this is something, if you got it, you've got it. So it makes things easier because people are more easily getting in, in the journey.
And this, coming back to the integration discourse, this for you, it was just a very, very simple path for you to integrate straight away, because you become respected by the people that work with you and see your professionalism. At the same time, you get to meet so many people that have the same sort of interests as you have. And then you end up by realizing that all over the city, in this case we are talking about Limassol, all over the city there are so many people that have the same sort of mindset as you, even though they don't have your background and the experiences you had back in France. How fast was it for you to integrate?
Once again, quite easily, because I don't know why, I can't explain. I'm born in Paris, so I can't say that I have the culture of a middle town like Limassol with the seashore, the sea, the easy life. But definitely caring about people, sharing, that was my only... That was my tool on my backpack. And then you mentioned that I've been respected, but I respect as well my partners.
Mutual respect.
And the challenge for me was not to convince those that were already convinced, that might still a minority in Limassol taking really care about culture. My aim was to convince those ones who are not convinced and do not take particular attention because they never thought that bringing culture in Limassol could be a way as well to enrich the quality of life. So it's not only in terms of practical matters and environmental matters, culture count anymore in the quality of what we call the quality of life. We have time for leisure, we have time to spend for ourselves, and culture might be one of the best bridge to understand who you are and what you want to do in your life, but as well to have a better understanding of the other. So that was my conviction. And how difficult it was, it's still difficult when you push people out of their boundaries, of their comfort zone. It's always difficult. But it's a pleasure for me, and a challenge.
Language also helps, because I know you speak perfectly Greek. So how did you decide, or at which stage did you decide that it was important to learn how to communicate in Greek?
From the beginning. Because from the moment that as a foreigner you decide to belong to the diaspora, wherever you are, the key word is respect. So if you want to respect yourself, but as well the people you are working with or living with, intelligence, emotional intelligence is language is part of it. So there's so many things that I couldn't translate in French when I want to express my feeling or my decision or my way of thinking. So I have to go in Greek anymore, because yes, there are things that are really linked to the culture of these islands. So Greek and Cypriot as well, talking Cypriot.
Yes.
The dialect is very important. That's why we did as well a big exhibition on the history of writing to that extent. But the language became because I speak other languages as well. My kids the same. So we are citizens of the world. So it doesn't matter. I mean,
multilingualism is part of today's life.
Yeah, it's part of our daily life, and yes, you can't push people to respect you. You have to come to them, and when you speak 2 words in Greek, they will love it. as I love people when they try to speak two words in French.
Exactly.
So okay,
help
common
us
respect.
out here and tell us, what do you consider are the most important words to learn in Greek? If, let's say, I'm a foreigner, I just arrived and I'm going to settle in Limassol,
Word.
give us your input there, your
Thank
suggestions.
you. Ευχαριστώ. Merci. Το merci, το ευχαριστώ, τα λέει όλα. It says all. You might have some misunderstanding with the community when you are not just arrived, and definitely the body language is different, state of mind is different. But before to go to misunderstanding, if you say to someone in Greek, thank you, ευχαριστώ, that you took time to consider that you had a moment together, and he gives you something. You say thank you. So, yeah, maybe ευχαριστώ. Ναι, ευχαριστώ.
Okay.
Ευχαριστώ.
How long it took you to reach the level you have now? Because for those who know you and have seen you,
This is a really crazy story.
Okay.
It's a real story. Even though I met my husband in Paris, I was not talking a word, of course. And when we arrived,
you were communicating in French.
In French,
Yeah.
okay, in French. But I said, okay, Katerina, you have to do something now that you are here. So I tried to take some lessons in the college back then. It was a disaster because it was not going to at the speed that I wanted. So my first job was for another municipality, I have to mention. It was with the municipality of Nicosia back then. And I had to handle a project. I was the useless person to do that. It was for the 15 years of the cultural center of Nicosia. And I said to the mayor, how can you consider that I could do that? And he looked at me and he said, okay, I'm sure you can do that. It's not question of language, or I'm sure you will get through that. So what I did is that I took a dictionary. I went on the archive they have a basement in the municipality. I took my dictionary and I started to read newspaper and to translate. That was the non-orthodox way of learning Greek. It was a mistake. I should have done it more properly, more academically.
There is no wrong way to learn a language.
But it was crazy. So, okay. And after, because I've been integrated very quickly in the community. So, and once again, it's much more pleasant when you go in the mountain out of the city and you can say ευχαριστώ on the coffee shop. I mean, people respect that. That's pleasure.
People. I think this is one of the most important things. You have also it's a matter of being aware of your environment. I would say for those who have children, you tell them, be aware of this, be aware of that. But how can you be 100% aware if you cannot understand what people are saying around you? So
you're not obliged to learn it, It depends on your activities and your own will and your capacity as well. So you have to respect the fact that some people might not be, or feel confused or shamed because they can't pronounce properly. French are really like that. I mean, it's terrible how unconfident we are with foreign languages. So we don't want to speak because we say we're going to say a mistake. Perfectionist. Yes. But nevertheless, Greek is not an easy thing. Mm-hmm. But it's part of the game. I mean,
So once you were able to communicate in Greek, and you had this amazing mission, it wasn't more than a job in Limassol.
Yeah.
Where were the spots? Give us some suggestions here for those who just arrived that you would say it's special. It's special spots in Limassol.
Mm-hmm. So Limassol have changed a lot, but something that as a foreigner here, as French, I was missing a lot the oysters.
Oh, I see.
In terms of food. And because I'm not cooking, I don't have time to cook. I'm very bad. I discovered an amazing place in Limassol that by chance, and I felt in love with, and I forgot always the name. You're going to tell me again.
Puesta.
Puesta. The Puesta. Puesta is a unique place because it combines these European cooking and Mediterranean cooking, oysters, fresh oyster. You are in the middle of Mediterranean and you have oysters. That's for me, it's
directly
imported. And this is a beautiful environment. So and diachronico. So I put it here, somewhere here near the seashore, before the Four Seasons Hotel. Try not to miss it. You will find it on the Google. It's hidden place, but είναι όλα τα λεφτά, we say in Greek.
And I would say you better book in advance because they're always booked.
You have to be organized if you want to, to enjoy.
What else? Give
if
us
you are
another
gourmet.
spot. Yes.
And the other spot, I'm a walk alcoholic. So my spot for years and even now, the best place in town for me with the vibe of Limassol is the whole town. My office was my second home, if not the first. And the development of Limassol for the last 15 years proved that the old Limassol, the spirit of Limassol, it's amazing. So my office, the Lanitis, the carob mill, the carob mill is the second spot.
So
on the other old town. Let me see where we are. Somewhere here.
So for those who don't know, Lanitis Center, for those who just arrived.
It's the carob mill.
Yeah, it's carob mill.
Lanitis carob mill.
It's just behind the medieval castle. So for those who want to go out there and explore the area, I would say that even if there is nothing happening and you just
there is always things happening there.
Yes,
and if not, just looking at the scenery is amazing because if you care about architecture.
I remember that the very first days, the very first weeks, whenever we were sitting and having a coffee or having dinner in Artima or Stretto, you could still smell the carob because it used to be
tell me about it. In that center, 1,000 square meters, we had the smell at the beginning in the cultural center.
It's unique. It's
unique and so many secret of our unknown story of Limassol that the public of Limassol, and I think the foreigners as well, want to discover even more now, and there is a lot of tour organized with a different perspective, different angle, different approach. It can be architecture, it can be gourmet, it can be food, there's so many stories around this area, which is amazing. So if nothing's happening, there is always something that can happen.
Yes,
definitely.
And it's an area that deserves some of your time to go out there and explore. You even have in the building at some point at the back the old machines and the explanation of the industry. Old gold. I mean, it was considered to be gold back then.
The black gold,
the
black gold of Cyprus.
So it is a very, very interesting way of getting to know better the background of Limassol. With all these interesting roles you had on the island, you met amazing people, as you said before. You connected with Limassolians, as you said many times. But I'm sure you also found areas that if we who want Limassol to become better and better, to improve in the future as a city, we can also suggest important new maybe regulations, new sort of initiatives, what would be your suggestions for the future for any policymaker that might be listening to us?
We definitely have to plan in the long term as a citizen, as a person, as a professional, as a woman, as a man, as a family. I mean, what is missing sometimes in Cyprus is this, we don't put in perspective in the long term. That creates tension And unfortunately, it's been proved that we stuck sometimes because we don't have this state of mind. So if we really want to, more than word, consider that we want to do something, is that we have to do something. So policymaker, you have different sorts of people involved in policy making. Can be in the economy, can be in politics, it can be in many, many sectors. In culture, cultural diplomacy needs, of course, this kind of strategic plan. When we consider that in Limassol, the good aspect, let's say the advantage of Limassol is not only the local, but the communities coming from abroad. And those communities, even though they are very different, very coming from completely different culture, different part of the world, they can be the essence of acting in a more inclusive way. So planning the extension of the growth of a community, of a town, include that one direction could be, first of all, to multiply what we call usually the think tanks. Think tanks in the sense that if you ask to the other his view, you will collect data. All the information that you will collect will definitely not be useful for your own strategy, depending what you want to develop in the town. But you asked to the other. You ask to the citizen, irrelevant if it's Cypriot or non-Cypriot. So it means that you have potentially an answer to in which direction you could go in order to have a better strategy for the development, but not the common development, but the personal development of each of us. And I think that Limassol can do better, more, to listen, not only to hear,
active listening,
but listening what the people have to say, even though you might not agree. But the policymakers are definitely needed with a completely different approach.
Yeah, so
it can be politics, it can be economy, and this synergy between the public sector and the private sector in Limassol, which is unique, doesn't exist in the other town, is my point of view. It's definitely a positive aspect for Limassol to boost things. Limassol is in contact with many other towns, similar to Limassol, to her. And I'm sure that there is the new generation, we have the
Tell
community
us
of university.
We have that precisely can show this.
Yeah, so because it's linked to that. I always try to imagine or to understand what could be the need of the citizen in the next 5 or 2 years, next 10 years, whatever. Because when you talk about culture creating event, it's long-term investment as well. But having in mind all the vibes and traveling a lot all over Europe, as most of us, it's easier now to connect people to cultural events in outdoor. We had COVID. COVID proved that we need to keep in real relation with others. And so my next project is actually the second of that kind, is a festival of photography of Limassol, which is dedicated this year to athleticism and Olympics. So we work in collaboration with the French embassy, with the municipality of Limassol that gave us places, squares, everywhere in town. So we are growing. And so the Festival of Photography dedicated to sports is inclusive. It's an holistic artistic way of presenting sports. So we will have different exhibitions on different places and squares, as I said before, of the town. So we will be on the seashore, on the Molos, on the Old Port, in different places where people are not expecting to have arts. Visual arts,
and
okay? This will be
month.
From the big opening is on the 11th of April. It will will keep for 1 month. And we will have workshop as well and lecture about photography. But it's a big yorti. It's a party, let's say, a cultural invitation to understanding better how healthy can be sports, the value of sports, how you can connect with the other through sports and photography. So yes, amazing. It's
amazing.
It's so a big thing.
Once more, you are building bridges now between different areas, different dimensions, using culture and using new ideas, pioneering ideas, like always. Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to thank you very, very much for your time with us. This is not going to be the last. We'll have many other opportunities to cooperate.
My pleasure.
This was an amazing and inspiring example of how someone can come from a completely different country, but nevertheless find ways where you managed to bring a bit of your country as well in some of your activities.
But Limassol gave me a lot as well.
Yes, but also taking from what Limassol had to offer you.
Yeah.
So once more, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the invitation, Paula.
I hope
My
that
pleasure.
our listeners and our audience will be here with us again next week to get to connect with one more of our Limassol ambassadors, people that are active citizens, and it doesn't matter if they were not born here. In fact, they sometimes feel even more the feeling that they have to contribute to our city. So thank you very much, and Limassol ambassadors will be here next week again. Thank you.
Merci.
This is the El Air Uncut.